Welcome to this lecture. Our main aim now is to try and understand how can we create lattice scatter plots. Okay, so we're going to use this data set that contain the prices and other attributes of the diamonds. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's just read this data set. So we come here and say diamonds. Okay, so we're going to say read .csv and we're going to pass in diamonds.csv. So if we come in here and say the head of this data set, so I'm going to try and just run this again so that we can see the columns that we are going to use. Okay, so we have this data set. So we can, as you can observe here, we want to focus on this carat, so which represents the weight of the diamonds. Okay, so we also want to see the cut, which tells us the quality of the cut. So you can see we have ideal, premium, good, etc. Okay, so we also want to make use of this column, right? So this is a column that tells us the price in US dollars. So this is the price of these diamonds in US dollars. Okay, so you also have additional columns like color and so on. The first step is to, of course, try and attach this library lattice. Okay, so after we attach this library, we want to create a scatter plot. Say, for example, we want to examine the relationship between the price as well as the weight of the diamond. Okay, so we come here and say xyplot. Remember, we have to specify the graph type, right? And now what we want on the what we want on the y-axis, right? So that is somehow what you can refer as a dependent variable. So in this case, we want the price. Okay, and then we want to examine the relationship of the price as well as the carat, which is the weight of the diamond, right? And remember, we have to specify our data set, which is diamonds. After you run the code, you will observe that we have created these simple scatter plots. Okay, so how does this work is that we specify the formula. Okay, so what we want on the y-axis and what we want on the x-axis, as well as the data set, which is diamonds. So, right, so from this scatter plot, we can see that the diamonds that seems to be much expensive, they have even like a much weight. Okay, so the higher the weight of the diamond, we can observe here that this seems to be an uptrend. So it tells us that the higher the weight of the diamond, the higher the price of those diamonds. Okay, so how can we try to modify this scatter plot? Say we want now to add the labels for the y-axis as well as the x-axis. So come in here, going to try and minimize this a little bit so we can be able to see the code. And I'm going to move this. Okay, so when we come in here, after we specify our data set, we're going to come, as in the usual, we specify the main. So right, so in this case, we're going to say the price. We're going to say the price of diamonds. This is the weight of the diamond. So if you run this, you observe we have managed to add the main title, right? So also for the X labels, so we can come here and say this here is the weight, right? Which is the number of carats. Okay, if you run this, you observe we are simply just changing the XX labels, as now what we want to do is we want to change the labels for the y-axis. So in this case, this is simply just the price, right? So this is simply just a price. So if you run this, you observe we now have managed to add the main title. We have managed to add the X labels as well as the Y labels. Okay, so that is a simple way in which you can try to create a scatter plot. Okay, but now say in your scatter plots you want to change the shape, okay, as well as the color, right, as well as the color of your points, because the default one in this case is our points are blue. So we want to change the shape. We also want to change the size as well as the color. So how can you do that? So if you come in here, I'm going to clear the console, and if you come in here, you keep on adding. So in this case, if you come in here and say here you want to change, move this a little bit, so you want to change, let's say for example you put in 8, right? So if you run this, let's wait a little bit. So you observe here we have managed to change the shape of the points, right? So we are simply just changing the shape of the points in a usual way. We can also change the size of these points. Okay, say for example we put in 0.8, and if you try to, this is quite a huge data set, but if you come in here and you can see that we have now managed to change the size of these points. So my R is quite a little bit slower, but we can also change the color, right? So if we change the color, we have to pass in, we have to change this color argument. And let's say for example here in this case, because we already had blue, let's say we want gold, and if you run this, and you observe we managed to change all the points to gold. So that is how you can just play around. You can change the shape of your points in your scatter plot. You change the color as well as the shape. Okay,